25-30, 35-40, 45-50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. No, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Oh my goodness. I feel like I need a cigarette after the way that week 4 ended up. We went from the most boring slate of Monday morning games that I can remember to information overload in the afternoon to a very stressful evening this night as we watched our Texas A&M Aggies try and stave off a little bit of Maction magic in Kyle Field. We have termed this chaos in week 4. We welcome you in to a live reaction post-game edition of the week 4 recap. USC gets run over by Michigan. Tennessee stifles Oklahoma. Utah handles the Pokes. We've got so much to talk about, and we're going to do it right here live with you on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever you may be. We're glad to have you on this Saturday night. Garrett Turney, Trey Reeves joining as well, guys. Crazy Saturday that was it. I don't even know if it was a slow build. It was just like nothing was happening in the morning. All the games were blowouts. Trey, I texted you. I was like, well, I guess I'm doing some chores around the old homestead. And then, we got to the afternoon and I couldn't keep up.
Yeah, I was exactly the same way. We went out for lunch. We kind of spent some time outside of the house in the morning once it was really clear that none of the games were going to be competitive. There were a few ones that had some fun endings and some fun moments. The Louisiana-Tulane game was really fun in the morning.
Yeah, it was.
I think there were a couple other ones that ended up being a little spicy. But, man, that afternoon slate hit, and I didn't have enough screens. I didn't have enough quad boxes. I didn't have enough windows to keep up with everything. Also, YouTube TV was not clutch, the opposite of clutch with what I needed from a quad box today. So someone at the Alphabet company might be getting a strongly worded letter from yours truly. But it was a great day. A lot of chaos, a lot of fun, close games. We still have fun, close games as we're reacting to this. Colorado's trying to punch it in overtime to take a lead on Baylor. Looks like they got a touchdown there. Yeah.
I don't want to spoil it for you, Trey. I know I'm like 10 seconds ahead of you.
A little bit ahead of me. So I got to see Michael Welch just punch it in for a touchdown. So Colorado takes the lead in overtime after a crazy Hail Mary on the last play of the game. So, I mean, I think the night's still young, guys. I think we might have some more chaos yet.
East Carolina is up 14 at the end of the first quarter over Liberty right now. That's a game that's been rain delayed like 5 hours. We got Kansas State and BYU playing. There's just plenty of good games going on. So hopefully you've got that on a big screen. You've got us on your phone, on your laptop, whatever it might be. Guys, let's dive right into it. We got a number of games to talk through. We've got a chaos segment. We've got a taking care of business segment to get through. And we want to be able to answer any questions that you might have if you want to hop in the chat. If you're listening to the podcast afterwards, hit subscribe. We'd love to have you as the Jimmies and the Joes. We'd love to have you join on a live show down the line as well. Michigan, 27, USC, 24. It was not yours truly that expected to see this result. Michigan, I guess, found a little bit of an offensive pulse. They certainly reaffirm their offensive identity, which is ground and pound. They successfully won in the trenches. I think that is without a doubt the headline here. 290 yards on the ground. That is good, guys, for 6.3 a pop. Garrett, Michigan did this without throwing the ball hardly at all. I still think that's going to be an issue for them, but it made a couple of things very clear to me. One, Michigan has a one-track mind with how they're going to win football games. Two, USC is not prepared for the smoke of a physical Big Ten conference. And three, honestly, kind of the side effect of this, I think Texas is really good, the way that they absolutely blitzkrieg the Wolverines. Take whichever of those points you want.
I'm going to avoid transitive property right now. I think that this early in the season, I'm still just going to avoid taking transitive property into effect. So, yes, I still think Texas is a good team because they beat Michigan. Definitely don't think Michigan was the same team because obviously Alex Orji is some kind of a solution at the quarterback spot. If for nothing else, then he just made the opposing defense respect the fact that the quarterback can do anything, right? He wasn't necessarily massively effective. He had 32 yards passing on 12 attempts, which clearly is not something you expect to see in modern college football. And really, with his legs, only had 43 rushing yards. So, it wasn't like he had the best day on the ground. But what he was able to do was spring his other guys, specifically Kalel Mullings, absolutely bursting forth onto the scene, 159 yards, 2 touchdowns, had a fantastic game. And so, I think end of the day, this story has not as much to do with the Michigan offense, and it has a lot more to do with that Michigan defense, man. Getting the pick six, showing up and taking this USC offense that has looked really good so far and finally saying, we just got talked about, how we're no good. We gave up all those points to Texas at home and they took that, and I think they took it pretty hard and said, we're going to take that message that everyone's been talking about us and all this low expectations, and we're going to go out there, we're going to go show you who we still are, right? And I think there was a lot of that that was coming out of this game for Michigan. So a lot of pride today for the Wolverines. It was kind of one back. And I think at the end of the day, the greatest result that you get out of this, if you're Michigan, is you win your game and you get to kind of advance your season, right? So far, Michigan's got one loss to the number one team in the country. Mm-hmm. And so we're talking about how this looks at the end of the season. They might win a lot of ugly games this year, but if they've got one loss going into that Ohio State weekend somehow, there's going to be talk about Michigan in the playoff, and there should be, because even a 2-loss Michigan team, I would think if your 2 losses are only to Texas and Ohio State, you probably should get into the playoff. And so, again, this isn't me making the case for Michigan being the best team in the country. This isn't me making the case that Michigan is really actually a fantastic team, but you survive and you advance and you give yourself another opportunity to, get better, to improve, to, show the rest of the country that you can still be that team you were last year. And yeah, you give Orji another year or another week to kind of improve his game and improve, what he's going to be able to build on, going into the rest of his conference slate.
Trey, I see you.
I'm laughing. I'm just absolute chaos in Boulder, Colorado right now.
They definitely have not. This is under an official review.
Under review. We've got thousands of drunken children on the field.
I was trying to keep my thought there towards the end. This is bananas. What's happening?
If you're not watching the game, Baylor is trying to tie the game in overtime. There's a fumble at the goal line. It's called a fumble on the field, knocked out the back of the end zone for a touchback by Colorado. But they're definitely reviewing it, and there's definitely a case to be made that he crossed the plane potentially. And the Colorado students could not be bothered to wait for that official announcement.
Papa Blandino is gonna set us all straight.
And might I remind you, they are storming the field for Baylor.
Yeah.
Not to trash on Baylor. This is not necessarily the best Baylor team we've seen in the past decade or so. But yeah, this is still just Baylor.
I think that's a fumble. I think that's a fumble.
Winning's a little scarce up there. Yeah, it does look like it's going to be a fumble. Back to USC.
Back to USC, Michigan. Apologies.
Offensive
That's
line.
Part of the live show.
Offensive line for Michigan was really impressive. I like the way that they were sealing blocks. They destroyed USC in the trenches, both offensively and defensively. Miller Moss had no time to throw. He goes 28 of 51 for 283 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. He was really just a volume shooter today, 5.4 an average pass through the air. But USC, after all of this hype, and, we started to buy into it after the way that they beat LSU. I think it's also a referendum on maybe a very mid LSU team. We'll talk about them later. But we started to buy in that suddenly USC could play big boy football in the trenches. And I think today was a massive reality check that, no, they can't. It's certainly not, at least against the biggest and most physical teams. I think they're going to struggle to keep up. We were just a couple weeks ago, even last week, to be honest, we were criticizing Michigan, both their offensive and their defensive line, for their inability to step up. The offensive line had absolutely nothing going for them protecting the passer. The defensive line was really struggling to even get to the passer sometimes. They corrected all of those mistakes today. I thought Wink Martindale I guess did a good job scheming for USC. It looked like they were running a lot of soft zone coverage. They did mix in some man coverage. Will Johnson jumps that underneath route, the curl route for the pick six. Trey, what do you take away from this game? Are you more impressed with Michigan? Are you more depressed and out on USC after this game?
I thought Michigan had a great game plan on both sides of the ball, just imposed their will physically, ran the ball really well, like you guys mentioned. But for USC, man, they just had an awful start, about a worst possible first half that you could imagine. I think it was 14-3 at halftime. They were scrambling, trying to score a touchdown or kick a field goal to cut into that lead before halftime. You start moving the ball in the second half, and then all of a sudden you throw a pick six, and it seems like all is lost. But they had the lead, and they had this game. And the last drive of the game, you give up a 60-yard run when you know they can't throw the ball. The longest pass play of the game today for Michigan guys was 10 yards.
Yikes.
Like that, to me, that's just an embarrassment defensively. When you know the other team can't throw the ball, doesn't want to throw the ball, has no interest in pushing the ball downfield, and you still can't stop them from running it right down the middle. Mostly, Gary Danielson even commented, right? This was an old school, we're just going to run it right up the middle and dare you to stop it situation for Michigan on offense. So just a lot of questions, a lot of frustrations have to be there for the USC fans and the USC defensive staff watching that unfold. But man, offensively too, if you take out the sacks guys, they ran for over 7 yards a carry. They were running the ball relatively well when they actually decided to hand it off. And I think, the running backs, especially Marks, had 100 yards on the dot on just 13 carries. He was running the ball really well when they decided to feed it to him, but they decided that they wanted Miller Moss to drop back against a ferocious pass rush. I didn't really understand that. I know they were down quite a bit in the second half. That plays into it as well, but running the ball was working when they tried it. I wish they would have relied on that just a little bit more.
I felt like Danton Lynn maybe got out over his skis a little bit in this game. Like you said, that second half, at one point it felt like, okay, exhale, USC is going to survive. They're going to get out of here.
Like they might run away from it at one point.
It did. They had a couple of questionable play calls, I felt like, late in the fourth quarter when I really wanted them to just take the air out of the football. Like you said, they were getting some success going, and instead they wanted to run underneath routes. They wanted to run screens and do, with a bunch of eye candy. And Michigan's defensive line just wasn't having it. The amount of times that Miller Moss spiked the ball at Woody Marks' feet because there was nothing for him to do. He couldn't throw the ball. He had Mason Graham or somebody else in his face. It was really perplexing for me. Garrett, you said it. Great win for Michigan. This certainly resuscitates their season. USC's season is by no means over, but it is a very frustrating loss. And guys, again, I come back to the thought that, I just feel like Lincoln Riley is once again masquerading as a championship head coach. He refuses to make adjustments on the fly, and I really am concerned with USC's ability to adapt with him as head coach, because his style of play is not run the ball down your throat and continue to pick up yards on the ground. He uses the run to set up the pass. And it feels like Lincoln Riley is sometimes playing video games, right? Where he just wants to, there. Yeah, he wants to accumulate those stats. I just felt like this game was there for the Trojans taking late. Instead, for me, I come away with, Michigan can be really physical when they want to against, everyone except for maybe the elite of elite teams, if they can make it to the playoff. And USC is just not quite ready for the spotlight. Michigan will play Minnesota at home next week. Boy, the Gophers just have nothing going offensively. They lost to Iowa earlier tonight, and USC will probably get a bounce-back game against Wisconsin. They're at home before they take on the Gophers on the road. So from the Big House, we'll go to our premium game of the night, game of the week, Tennessee and Oklahoma. Tennessee 25, Oklahoma 15. Guys, this game played out, I think, pretty much like we expected it to. A few more turnovers from the Volunteers. Trey, you made some notes that it really felt like growing pains for Ima Leava. But Oklahoma's offense, non-existent in this game. They end up benching Jackson Arnold after, I think he was responsible for 3 turnovers in the first half. 2 of which were the very first play following a turnover that Oklahoma's defense had forced. There was just no momentum for Oklahoma. There was no space for them to operate. The mistakes piled up very quickly, and Tennessee welcomes Oklahoma to the SEC with a loss that is only a 10-point loss on the scoreboard. To me, it never felt like Oklahoma was even competitive in this game.
No, from the very beginning, it felt like Tennessee was kind of in control of this game. They traded some blows early, right? Traded field goals, and then Tennessee hit that big passing touchdown where it was just a busted coverage on a route over the middle. They got him with a fake, got the corner looking in the backfield, and it felt like it was off to the races for Tennessee. Some growing pains, like you mentioned, for Nico. One of his fumbles was certainly – at least one of his fumbles was certainly a ball security issue, just not holding the ball in the proper place when he was about to get hit. So definitely a lot of stuff for him to work on as he grows into the quarterback that Tennessee wants him to be. But a lot more questions for Oklahoma walking away from this. And I wrote this morning in the Saturday Storylines piece that the offenses are going to steal the headlines, but the defenses will decide this game. Oklahoma's defense, like you mentioned, Mitch, made a lot of plays to try to keep them in this ball game, forced some turnovers. One of the ones you're mentioning with Jackson Arnold, they had the ball inside the Tennessee 5. The very next play, Jackson Arnold fumbles, just doesn't hold on to the ball as he's getting hit by a couple of Tennessee defensive linemen. So, yeah, a lot of questions for Oklahoma as they go into a meat grinder of an SEC schedule this year. And they don't seem to have a lot of answers right now. It's 25-15 on the scoreboard. It felt more like 40-10 in actuality. Tennessee kind of got whatever they wanted.
Because once Tennessee was up by double digits, even by 10, it felt like, okay, I don't know if the Sooners have the horses, pun intended here, to catch up.
And it felt like Tennessee could have flipped it back on at any moment and put up more points if they really had to.
So we'll talk about, I want to talk about Tennessee, but the alarm bells should be sounding, I think, in Norman. I think the reality may be finally hitting, whether you read the message boards, whether you read Twitter, but Oklahoma fans cannot be disillusioned anymore that this team is going to make a run to the playoff this year. Their schedule at Auburn next week, which doesn't scare me. I think Oklahoma can easily win that game. Auburn's trash. Then they take on Texas, who is the number 1 team in the country for a reason. Home against South Carolina, at Ole Miss. They get the bye against Maine. At Mizzou, who looked mortal today. We'll talk about them. Versus Alabama at LSU. That schedule doesn't look as scary to me sitting where we are here in week 4, given some of the performances by South Carolina, by Missouri, by LSU. Heck, even Alabama has looked mortal at times. But the inability to score the football and move the football consistently, really, really concerning to me. Oklahoma passed for 186 yards tonight. 132 of that was Michael Hawkins Jr., the backup. They benched Jackson Arnold when he was 7 of 16 for 54 yards, an interception and 2 fumbles lost. They only ran the ball tonight, guys, for 36 yards. We came into this game looking at Tennessee's secondary as the way to beat them. It's a thin unit. Maybe if you can run them ragged, that's how you score points against Tennessee. Couldn't do that. They couldn't move the ball on the ground, and then the turnovers also killed you. Oklahoma now evidently has a quarterback controversy now that Michael Hawkins Jr. finished that game. It looked like the staff completely lost all faith in Jackson Arnold. The crowd was chanting for the backup. So where does Oklahoma turn in a week where now they do have to get ready to go on the road? Like, what's step 1 in fixing the schooner?
Well, I mean, you got to keep your defense playing good, right? Like, that's the big thing that I took away from this was, yes, I'm disappointed in the offense. That's obvious. But I was relatively impressed with the way that Oklahoma played on the defensive side of the ball, holding an extremely good Tennessee offense to, relatively low scoring totals and a lot of mistakes out of Nico. So, look, like, you want to take what you can, right? You go on the road, you're playing a bad Auburn team, that you're happy that you have a defense that proved it can play some ball. But, yeah, you got to get the offense fixed in a hurry. The offensive line, not ready. Quarterback controversy, if you want to call it that. I mean, I don't know how you treat this week in practice, right? I don't know how you treat – do you let them split reps at the ones? Do you try to say, hey, let's, get Arnold his confidence back and see if he can, bounce back, have a nice game against an inferior opponent? Or are we just cutting bait and saying like, hey, we saw you in the big moment and you failed, right? Like this is a question a lot of teams are probably having to ask themselves right now. And that's, Oklahoma's now counted among them. But you're right that at this point, Oklahoma fans should now see like, oh, this is a different thing, right? Like this is a different beast. We maybe overestimated ourselves a little bit coming into the season and now are figuring out just how much this daunting SEC schedule can be. I don't think that it's too late for the Sooners. Like after the way that their defense played, if they can figure out anything to just put together a fairly mediocre offense, I mean, I think they'll probably score some points and win some games they probably shouldn't, but at the same time, that's a big if right now when you just saw the quarterback play that you saw. And I do want to give credit to Tennessee. Like, this is a good Tennessee team. We sat here talking about Oklahoma a lot. Like, one of the things I highlighted going into this is that Tennessee defense has been playing a lot better. They've been rushing to the ball. They've been playing, kind of crazy, like their hair's on fire type defense. And this is just very good defensive unit for Tennessee that, really they were able to lean back and rely on that unit tonight when things weren't really going well. You're on the road, hostile environment, right? Like it's a tough scene for a young quarterback to go into that spot and then start to struggle, but your defense bailed you out. I mean, they kept it, 19-3 at halftime. Like this one wasn't a competitive game through one half. You get to go back into the locker room, kind of breathe a sigh of relief that you're up by so much. So I think this is a better showing from Oklahoma than I expected. But once again, it shows you what I was talking about with that Tennessee defense. It's a good defensive unit, and Tennessee is going to score a lot more this year than just 25 against a good opponent, right? They're going to put points up. If this defense can keep playing at this level for Tennessee, Tennessee's going to be special this year.
Trey, tell me about Imaliava. We talked about the growing pains. Another game where he doesn't put up just eye-popping passing numbers, but there are plays where he definitively looks like he is in control, where he's got that kind of fifth-year senior poise. I feel like Nico is a guy that's going to continue to grow with this Tennessee team. I'm not really daunted by some of those lapses in judgment or the careless fumble necessarily like I would be with a less complete program.
Absolutely. You're spot on there. You can look over some of the lapses and focus, some of the freshman plays because of the senior level plays that he makes night in and night out. You look at the stat line, it's not going to wow you tonight, right? He didn't even throw for 200 yards. It was 9.2 yards per attempt. So he's still pushing the ball downfield. He's putting in his receivers in a good position to make plays. And he's, making plays with his legs when he has to as well. He had to run away from some big defensive linemen tonight too, but the difference between him and Jackson Arnold was he kept his composure more often than not in those situations. He had his lapses, but more often than not, he was keeping his composure. That's the difference in the two freshman quarterbacks we saw tonight. Guys, that first half was just, I don't know what you take away from that and hope for the future and development, because if it's anything like that first half going forward for Oklahoma, it's not going to be fun the rest of this year. It won't be like that. You're never as bad as your worst half of football, but that was ugly. That had to send a lot of concerns through Sooner Nation.
Well, and good that you made the point. You're not as bad as your worst half of football, but has Oklahoma really had a good half of football so far this season, right? Maybe putting away Temple, congratulations. Maybe putting away Tulane in the fourth quarter. But other than that, there's not a lot of successes to look back on for the Sooners. So I'm concerned about Oklahoma, optimistic. I think this was a solid win for Tennessee. We'll keep going with the Volunteers. I think now as an SEC favorite, potentially in a playoff contender, most certainly. Let's go across the state. Stillwater, Oklahoma. Oklahoma State falls 22-19 to the Utah Utes, the Cam Rising-less Utes. Again, doesn't get to play in a game. I feel like Cam Rising is more of a legend than he is a reality at this point. He's never healthy, man. This time I think it's a laceration on his hand, which absolutely stinks. But Utah finds a way. And if you were backing the Utes, you got to see probably what you hung your hat on. Physical defense, a running game that Oklahoma State just really could not stop when they absolutely needed to. There was some atrocious tackling from Oklahoma State late in that ball game when they had a chance to climb back into it. This is the first ranked loss at home for Oklahoma State since 2019. They'd previously won their 8 last games against a ranked opponent. That's what I was banking on. And I talked about that in the preview. Everything analytics-wise was saying take Utah. Maybe this is a close game. Maybe you could still take the Pokes plus the points and take Utah to win. But back the Utes to find a way to win this game. And I decided to go with the legend of Boone Pickens Stadium and the lore of Mike Gundy inexplicably finding a way to win this. Trey, the drive chart, it's scary, man. It looks like this: punt, downs, field goal, interception, punt, field goal, punt, touchdown, missed field goal, fumble, interception, interception, end of half, punt, missed field goal, punt, field goal, punt, field goal, punt, interception, garbage touchdown, punt, garbage touchdown, end of game. Oh boy, that was hard to watch. I texted you, my eyes hurt watching that game.
Yeah, man, it was a really difficult watch at times, but the Utah defense, if you're a fan of defense, Utah's defense won this game for them with a backup quarterback. That's exactly what you want to see from your defense when you know your offense is going to struggle to move the ball a little bit more than usual.
Yep.
Before those 2 late garbage time touchdowns that you mentioned, Mitch, they held Oklahoma State to just 143 total yards. And 9 of the Cowboys' first 12 drives were 3 plays or less. That is a recipe for success on the road. That defense is going to travel everywhere it goes in the Big 12. And, I hope Cam Rising is okay. I hope we get to see this Utah offense be everything that it can be with Cam Rising, because I think that's a really fun team to pair with a really, really good defense. But even if not, I still think they're going to win a lot of games in the Big 12 with a defense that can be that dominant against an offense that was looking like one of the conference's best going into this week. So, yeah, other than a couple lapses late when they already had it in hand, I think it was 21-3 at that point, 22-3, something like that. Other than a couple of lapses late, you got to be really confident in what you're seeing from that Utah defense.
Yeah, Garrett, Alan Bowman benched at one point in this game. He finishes 16-33, 206 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Those 2 touchdowns were both the garbage time touchdowns, right? As they tried to claw back, Utah is maybe a little conservative on defense. But yeah, the explosive plays non-existent. At one point in the first half, I think right before the end of the half, right as Oklahoma State once again went 3 and out, they popped up a graphic that Oklahoma State only had 5 total plays of at least 10 yards. 3 of them were passing, 2 of them were rushing. In fact, they only rush 15 times for 48 yards. Defenses are not respecting Ollie Gordon or I guess they are respecting Ollie Gordon this season. They're plugging up those gaps. The offensive line's protecting the quarterback, but they just cannot open up a lane for anybody to run through.
Yeah, I was going to say we might need to put an APB out for Ollie Gordon. I know it was a big matchup last night down here in Euless and the high school rain. Maybe came down to watch the team support him. Didn't quite make it back for the game. I don't remember seeing him today. I didn't see him make a difference. That's one of the most shocking things is just how gone he's been from college football so far. I mean, you get a team like this, right? You have Alan Bowman, experience at the quarterback position, Ollie Gordon, Heisman hype going into the year, one of the best running backs, maybe the best running back should be in the college game versus, and, we were kind of questionable, is Cam going to go or not? You get a freshman and Isaac Wilson out there who's not really ready for the moment. I think that was obvious watching the game. He stepped up and he was gutsy. Like he went out there and did his job, but there were a lot of moments where I was watching him out there and I'm like, yeah, he just doesn't seem like he's ready for this moment. It doesn't seem like he's quite ready to be playing, D1 college football quite yet. But then Micah Bernard goes out there for Utah and just tears it up. Yeah. Utah outrushes them, not only the 15 for 48 for Oklahoma, Utah ran the ball 52 times for 249 yards. They just said, guess what? We're going to run it. And you can, hopefully you would think that the Oklahoma State defense would be able to come in with the same plan that Utah's defense came in with. We're going to stop your running back, prove that you can throw it, right? That would be, in my opinion, what the game plan should be. They couldn't do it. They couldn't plug holes. They couldn't tackle. They got embarrassed in a lot of different spots. And when they needed the response, they just couldn't get it. I mean, to watch the meltdown from the stands, right? If you're watching this game, you saw Oklahoma State fans melting down in real time, watching them go from Bowman to Rangel and then have to go back after that didn't work, and watching balls completely miss and sail out of bounds, and no competitive drives, 3 and outs here and there. Like, it was really, really bad. Like it got really, really ugly for Oklahoma State. And, at once, Keithy hit that big, touchdown over the top. I mean, you could see, people were like falling over the walls and like just like serious, like unalive themselves watch. Cause they like a lot of
They were
people
heading for the exits for sure. That not a lot of people saw the last two garbage time touchdowns because they were already back in the parking lot.
It was too hot to stick around. It was 145 on the turf. I wondered when they showed that at the very beginning of the game. I wondered, okay, is this some sort of advantage for Oklahoma State? But I don't know. I talked about home field advantage maybe not being the nail in the coffin for road teams that we've kind of come to expect. I'm starting to think that the temperature doesn't really matter all that much either, because every time it feels like they talk about it, this team's acclimated and this team isn't. Well, it's like who's cramping down on the field? It's the home team.
At this point, conditioning has become too much of a science. The heat won't. Now, I still think that cold weather can be a massive factor on teams from the South having to pass the football, but that's to be figured out maybe in October and November for those Big Ten matchups where USC and UCLA have to go on the road or something. Or
a playoff game when the SEC has to go to the Big Ten.
That could be a big deal. But no, I just think overall, like, super disappointing from Oklahoma State. You had every chance to win this game, and you couldn't find a way to score points at all. And just overall, super disappointing. Ollie Gordon's got to find a way to get going. The good news for Oklahoma State is September is almost over, so it's almost time for y'all to turn it back on and play good football. So, and I mentioned on the preview, but Oklahoma State likes to play Green Day football, so wake me up when September ends, and we'll hope that can work for them.
Utah clearly is the head and shoulders favorite at this point to take the Big 12. We talked about the FBI giving a lot of love to UCF. Certainly
Kansas
not going to be.
Doesn't look like a Big 12 favorite at halftime.
No, I was going to say Kansas State getting wrecked right now by BYU. I took BYU plus the points. I didn't expect them to dominate like they're doing right now. It's a little bit of a scary situation.
We watched that team dominate in person. I don't know how we got surprised by this.
That's right. They held SMU to a handful of points when the Ponies went up and put up 66 on their crosstown rivals in TCU. We'll talk about that in the chaos segment coming up. Let's bounce around the rest of the country. Clemson 59, NC State 35. This game wasn't even as close as that score would indicate. This was an absolute bludgeoning from Clemson, Trey. Cade Klubnik looks like he's figured it out. He and Garrett Riley had some sort of heart-to-heart, and suddenly they're clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, against a defense that I like to often point out is a tricky one to play against.
Yeah.
99.3 QBR out of 100 on ESPN system. He was doing it through the air. He was doing it on the ground. He had that long touchdown run early in the first half to kind of set the tone for the day. And what can you say? Clemson has done a complete 180 from where we saw them week one. We were worried about, can they even make a run at an ACC title? That ship has much sailed. They look like the class of the conference far and away right now. And they look like they would be a little bit more competitive if they were to line up against another elite team at this point in the season, rather than on the first week of the season. So I'm excited to see what they can keep building. We finally get to see the Cade Klubnik we were promised 2 or 3 years ago when he was coming out of high school. I'm happy for him. I really am, because he seems like a good kid that really wants to win at Clemson. And I love that he's finally getting to see some success.
Yeah, it seems like it's Clemson, Miami, and then everybody else beyond that. As a Clemson ACC champ ticket holder, tell you what, I was kind of squinting to get him there. I just kind of had to ride off of a wing and a prayer. The path is much more clear where we sit right now here at the end of September. Long way to go, but boy, the offense figuring it out. The defense gave up most of those points were late in that game. That game was never in doubt. It
was 45-3 at halftime, 45-10 maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I turned
it
off
was
by then.
all those points were garbage time points.
Yeah, exactly. Rutgers 26, Virginia Tech 23. Half of me is really happy for the Scarlet Knights. The other half is mourning Virginia Tech, who is just going to underperform once again. I'm so frustrated with Virginia Tech not being able to defend home field, but at the same time, in the preview, I told you take Rutgers plus 5.5. I felt like they were going to win outright. Defense and running the football on the ground. I mean, Kyle Monagai, if folks aren't familiar with who he is, they need to get familiar. He's a tremendous running back. And, Rutgers, suddenly they look like a little bit of a complete team. Athan Kaliak-Manis is throwing the ball just fine. He's able to use his legs as well. Defense wins and defense travels on the road, and they're able to get it done by 3 over Virginia Tech, who just kept turning the football over.
Yeah, they're built like a Big Ten team should be, and I think it's really cool to see because, I mean, obviously Rutgers, previously in the last, not in the last couple of years, but before that, kind of one of the punchlines for college football, and it's just kind of cool to see some of these teams really start to rise up and become something that's, pretty competitive and respectable. We're looking at a 3-0 Rutgers team right now, and I don't know if they'll compete in the Big Ten, but I mean, they're certainly going out and beating teams that maybe they shouldn't on their own home field, and maybe you should look at this game and say Virginia Tech should win that game, but they went out and took care of business and, almost blew it late, got out of town with the win barely, but, you get your wins and you take it with you and, you play some defense and run the ball. That'll get it done in a lot of places in the Big Ten. So, I'm kind of excited to watch them going forward and see, kind of maybe more big picture where the program can go from here, see if they can maybe, become a little bit of a transfer portal destination now that we've gotten a better proof of concept.
They're recruiting really well in the high school ranks as well. Shout out Samuel Brown, the 5th, who had 14 carries, 60 yards, a couple of touchdowns. Kaliak-Manis throws for 269. On the other side, Virginia Tech, they just could not keep Kyron Jones upright. He throws a late interception that was batted up into the air. The guy was tripped over by his right guard, resulting in a safety in the first half. He finishes 13 of 27 for a $137, a QBR of 32.3. Virginia Tech was able to run the ball fairly well. Bashal Tootin, 15 carries for 122. He had 3 touchdowns. It's kind of lost in all this how good of a running back Tootin is, and he wasn't even fully healthy coming into this matchup either. But Rutgers gets the win on the ground. Again, frustrated with Virginia Tech. Speaking of frustrating, guys, down on the plains, Arkansas 24, Auburn 14. Turnovers defined this game. Trey, I don't know if you want to try and take a stab at this to make sense of it for people that weren't watching. My brother texted me. Evidently, one of his good buddies is an Auburn fan and was just sending me screenshots of the pain that War Damn Eagle was going through in this one.
Yeah, so this one was 7-0 Arkansas at the half. And you got to read a drive chart earlier, Mitch. I would like to present this first half drive chart.
Please do.
So missed field goal, interception, touchdown. That was all the excitement scoring wise for the first half on the first 3 possessions. Then it went punt, downs, fumble, punt, interception, interception, interception. You heard that right. 3 interceptions within 5 plays. And then mercifully the half ended 7-0 Arkansas. That sequence, man, where it was, I think, Auburn throws an interception. The very next play, Arkansas throws it right back to them. 2 plays later, Auburn throws it right back to Arkansas. That sequence just kind of defined the game. I know there was some excitement in the second half. There were a little bit more scoring. I think there was a couple offensive touchdowns and a little bit more cohesiveness in the second half. But man, what an ugly game. I don't know where Auburn finds confidence for the rest of the year. We got former quarterbacks of their coach tweeting all the dirty secrets of Hugh Freeze. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what Auburn, they even said it on the broadcast. When you have a starter and things aren't going well, you go to QB2, and now QB2 isn't going well. So where do you find optimism for the rest of the schedule for Auburn? I don't know.
Yeah, Bo Wallace, who's known as being as stable as a rocking chair, was absolutely going off on Hugh Freeze. If you want to dive into just a really interesting thread, go look him up on Twitter. Yeah, Hank Brown throws 3 interceptions. He gets benched for Peyton Thorne, who immediately throws an interception after re-entering the ball game. Hugh Freeze was beyond frustrated in the halftime interview. He basically said, yeah, our guys are running wide open. We just keep throwing it to the wrong jersey. And that was really what was happening. It wasn't like Arkansas had this blanket coverage on a couple of those picks. It was just terrible throws.
Okay, but did you see the Thorne interception? He threw it to his receiver in stride, and it glanced off his hands to the safety. That, by the way, after, if you want an idea of how stupid this game was, and by the way, said that in the previous show, this game is always stupid. It feels like, Auburn, Arkansas, there's always something dumb that happens. In this game, the drive previous to that, there was a 2nd and 5 play where they tried a little, reverse pass situation and then got called for intentional grounding, which should just never happen on a reverse pass. You should have somebody deep, the shot set up, right? Nope, intentional grounding. And then the next play was a rollout to avoid a sack where he hit a guy over the top and Satania scores for like 58 yards. So, Again, this game was just kind of dumb. Thorne got kind of screwed on that pick. Like, Thorne did the right thing there. And I thought Thorne bounced back well, right? This is a guy who, you get benched for, next man up and your, college career is all but over. And, then you come back and you play well after getting the recall after the 3 picks from the other guys. So I thought he stepped up and played okay before the guy that he decided to hit over the middle didn't have hands.
Yeah, that was a true freshman, Cam Coleman, who evidently quit on the route, is what Hugh Freeze said, and then tried to play catch up. And
quitting on the route's interesting for 2 hands on the ball. BYU.
The longest play in this game was Keandre Lambert-Smith, a 67-yard touchdown on a post pattern. It was just cover 0 from Arkansas. Like, the Hogs brought the house and didn't leave anybody in the back to cover Keandre Lambert-Smith. The safety that was over top of him was shading to the sideline side. So Lambert broke it off inside, and there it was. Really tough game to watch offensively. Talk to me, Trey, about where you project each of these teams. Like, is there anything that you take away from this game and go, okay, here's what they build on? For Arkansas, they take on Texas A&M and Jerry World next week. Then they get Tennessee. Then they get LSU. They get a bye week against Mississippi State, which is great. But then they get Ole Miss, Texas, and Mizzou in 3 of their final 4 games. For Auburn, and I'll pull their schedule up here. Auburn's schedule's, I guess, a little bit easier, maybe. They host Oklahoma. They go to Georgia. They go to Missouri. They go to Kentucky.
To Alabama.
They host Vanderbilt, who almost beat Missouri. ULM, Texas A&M at the end of the season. We'll see what the Aggies look like. And then at Alabama for the Iron Bowl. Like, oh my goodness, both of these teams' seasons might be over in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, you asked me where I project them. The cellar of the SEC, I really don't see a lot of optimism. I know Arkansas got the win. They're 1-0 in league play. That's fantastic for right now. But yeah, the schedule's about to take a huge tick up starting next week in Arlington, a game that they've really struggled to win over the years in SEC play. So yeah, I don't trust Taylon Green to throw the ball for Arkansas. I don't trust Auburn to have a cohesive offensive plan at this point. So not a lot to be excited about until we figure those things out. There's still time. They could certainly put something different on the field. I like the running game from Arkansas. I think that could cause some teams a lot of problems. And we've seen teams like Texas A&M. We've seen even the Texas Longhorns struggle with giving up big, long chunk plays on the ground at times this season. So could give them some trouble, but until they really get more cohesiveness on the offensive side of the ball and have someone that I trust to throw the football down the field, I'm not really sure that I have a high ceiling for either of them.
Sure. Take me to LSU, UCLA. I think you were watching this game. I didn't get a chance to look at this one, but 34-17, LSU wins this. You were texting for a little bit that UCLA had the Tigers on the ropes when I think all of us were just convinced that LSU was going to cakewalk through this one.
Yeah, I mean, UCLA coming off an embarrassing loss to Indiana at home last week. This game was 17-17 at halftime, and credit LSU for shutting UCLA out in the second half, doing what they needed to do to distance themselves, but gave up 281 yards through the air to Ethan Garbers. Not a lot of rushing success for UCLA, so that's a big win for the Tigers, but man, still same old problems for LSU rearing their ugly head in that first half. They've been in a dogfight in all 4 of their games this year, including Nichols. I know the score doesn't look like it, but we had to flip over to the LSU Nichols game at one point. If I have to flip over to your game and you're playing an FCS team, not good. So lots of the same old problems for LSU in that first half. Credit them for fixing it in the second half. They did force a couple of turnovers and figure some stuff out in the second half, but I don't know. The defense really doesn't impress me still, and they really got a lot to figure out if they're going to be successful and make a run for the playoff or the SEC title.
Overall, what did you think about Nussmeier's performance in this game?
Yeah, I mean, the stats are going to wow you, right? 32 of 44 for 352 and 3. Moved the ball when he had to. Like I mentioned, the second half was really impressive. They moved the ball. They played good defense. Nussmeier made a lot of nice throws. He made a couple of mistakes that could have been intercepted. He looks like a guy that's still learning to play the position at a high level and hasn't had a ton of an in-game experience yet. So I'm still pretty high on him. I don't think he was the problem last week at South Carolina as much or against USC in the game that they actually lost. So I'm high on him. I think that offense is going to set him up for success, but I just don't know if he has the horses around him, especially on the other side of the ball, to lead a team to the heights that Daniels was able to.
Sure. All right, so I'll let you guys decide. Should we do a little moonlight session from Friday night? I know we'll probably end up talking about more of that on Monday. We've got the chaos segment to run through. We've got taking care of business to run through. What's the flavor of the moment here?
I'm okay to kind of touch on the Friday night very briefly and just say that Nebraska overtime attempt was one of the worst things that's ever happened to football.
I texted Mitch this, I think. I can't remember if I texted it to both of y'all. Nebraska has not scored a point in overtime since 2014.
Oh, that's sad. And
how many attempts, though? Like, is this something
games.
that they...
8 games.
Okay.
Nice.
That's still too many. You think they're lucky into a field goal.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, the play design was terrible. It felt like Dylan Raiola, I don't remember if I texted y'all this or tweeted it, felt like Dylan Raiola's controller got unplugged in overtime. Like he kind of ran out of gas. Both sacks that he took, the last one he had no chance on. But the pressure that he was seeing in his face, it was like he stopped recognizing it.
He looked like he was trying to extend the play and go be the hero when like he needed to just throw it away and save it for the next down. And this is the only thing I'm going to say. I had this thought in the moment, but like you're not Pat Mahomes. Like I get it. That's kind of the joke. Like,
but the
I get it.
He says otherwise.
He can. I'm sorry if you glasses on, glasses off type of thing, right? That's not Pat Mahomes. But no, like that's something that Pat Mahomes can do, and we all saw in the Super Bowl when he was like falling over and he makes that miraculous play. But like that's not the way that you should draw up a play. That's not the way that you should try to play football. When you go and become Pat Mahomes for real, not just in looks, you can go do that. He's still a really talented player. Like he's a crazy talented quarterback. Just be Dylan Raiola for a little bit and help Nebraska win. You're plenty talented to help Nebraska win and win a bunch of games. Stop trying to be something you're not right now.
Well, he missed a deep crossing route there on the final drive that would have given them the game. Nebraska, I felt like Nebraska should have won that game. Credit Illinois for their defense standing in. Luke Altmaier took care of the football. Illinois absolutely earned that win. But Saturday morning, when I woke up, I was like, golly, Nebraska should have won that game. Syracuse, similarly, I feel like should have won their game. Kyle McCord had a couple of terrible interceptions. The defense did just enough, but ultimately it's Ashton Daniels and Ayu Manor who engineer a final drive to win that game for Stanford. Stanford's 1-0 in ACC play. Syracuse kind of got out Syracused in their own building by the Cardinal.
Yeah, I'll let y'all take it. I didn't get to watch a ton of this game live, so I'll let y'all take it.
I didn't watch a bunch of this game, but my only take on the Syracuse game is they have once again left us asking the question that they cannot escape. Is Syracuse good? We don't know. Maybe they are. They lost to Stanford. That's not very good.
Yeah, they had some busts on defense, and McCord looked more like Honda McCord than his superstar self.
Yeah.
He has from the first 3 weeks. Other game Friday night was Wazoo and San Jose State. A lot of people, a lot of folks that I follow were saying, sprinkle some action if you're so inclined on San Jose State plus the points. They were 3-0 coming into this game. It was obviously a letdown spot for Washington State after the Apple Cup, and sure enough, defense didn't show up. Mateers Privateers ride again. I'm going to put that on a T-shirt one of these days.
They're
Trey,
4-0.
They are. And Trey, you had an interesting note in the run sheet about them being 4-0.
Yeah, they're 4-0 in back-to-back years. Obviously, last year didn't end the way that they wanted to, with finishing, I think, 1-7. But first time that they're 4-0 in back-to-back years since 1906-07.
Sheesh.
Yeah.
Predating.
Had tip to somebody on Reddit for that.
There you go. All right, guys, let's stir up a little bit of chaos. We did term this the week of chaos here in week 4. So there was a lot. If you missed any of the college football today, let's run it down for you. Starting with James Madison. Absolutely.
Mitch, I'm sorry. I got to pause you real quick. BYU just took a punt to the house. It is going to be 31-6 BYU. That is the most insane things. That is. I'm sorry. I just had to react to that real time. That is insane. Go Cougars. Way to go.
That was the stupidest punt return I've ever seen. Also,
that was so crazy.
Kansas State, their controller got turned off on that.
Speaking of teams whose controller got unplugged.
Rest in peace, the Farmers out west at elevation. Did throw that warning out there. All right, back on track. James Madison relegates North Carolina here 70-50. Absolutely no defense was played. That I tweeted that Gene Chizik might not have been the problem for the Tar Heels because Jeff Collins has come in, and boy, they are not any better. James Madison, I think North Carolina Chapel Hill is a satellite campus of James Madison at this point. Folks were leaving before the midway point in the second quarter, guys.
Yeah. No words for a putrid defensive performance. Looks like a basketball score you'd expect with North Carolina hosting James Madison. So, I mean, it was through the air. It was on the ground, 388 yards through the air, 223 on the ground for James Madison. The drive chart in the first half is just ridiculous from scoring. I think they only punted like twice the entire first half and only once or twice in the second half. So every time they touched the ball, they were moving it down the field and usually putting it into the end zone. Just a putrid performance from North Carolina. But, hey, I think James Madison might have put themselves in the driver's seat for the G5 playoff spot this week. Between that, and we'll talk about a couple other teams that fumbled the bag a little bit here in a second.
Yeah, I think if there was a drive chart to read tonight, it's this one. Field goal, fumble, punt, touchdown, punt, touchdown, punt, touchdown, fumble, touchdown, interception, fumble, punt, interception, touchdown, end of half. Field goal, touchdown, punt, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, punt, fumble, touchdown, end of game. 70-50.
The end of half got me, man.
120 points is just insane.
Yeah. I mean, it really was a basketball score.
Yeah. Jacoby Criswell throws for 475 and they get housed for North Carolina. Like that's tough. Yeah. James Madison in the driver's seat. They looked like a wagon. West Virginia has a game-winning drive against Kansas after a crazy long lightning
delay. Yeah.
I'm still not buying stock in West Virginia. This was a little bit of a pillow fight before and after the lightning delay. They looked better once they came back and resumed play. Guys, though, I am really, really out on the remainder of Kansas football this year. I think the Jeff Grimes curse may have been a little bit too much for Jalen Daniels. I saw Stats of War was tweeting that Daniels' quarterback career is just going to haunt him mentally because the best of Jalen Daniels we got to enjoy in very short spurts before he was hurt by injury, and now it looks like a completely different player.
Yeah, I've been really high on Kansas. I've been kind of cheering them on, driving the bandwagon a little bit. That I am sad, and I fear that I have to report that Kansas is back. And I hate to say it, but I think that Kansas is back.
Yeah, you had him in his Big 12 title contender.
I sure did. I believed in Jalen Daniels. I thought he'd stay healthy. I love the run game. Devin Neal and Daniel Highshaw, not the problems today. They combined for 182 rushing yards and a couple of scores. That's not the issue. This Kansas team just isn't getting it done.
Jalen Daniels is not this bad. I'm convinced.
Jeff Grimes might be.
The tape begs.
That's what I'm saying. I think is it just a Jeff Grimes problem? Because
I
never struggled with this.
Jeff Grimes isn't hitting opposing safeties in the numbers with the football. Like that's
I know. Yeah, he's
the interceptions that he's showing are shocking.
He's thrown some awful interceptions this year, but I'm wondering if it's just like transitioning to that scheme has just not been easy. And I'm wondering if it's a scheme issue rather than we know he's a talented quarterback.
Because he might be thinking too much. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if Jalen Daniels is one of those figures it out during the combine and ends up having a decent NFL career. Because he has tools and he can do it. He's not getting it done with Jeff Grimes, and I fear that Kansas is back.
That is yikes. Yeah, it's been a tough showing for the Jayhawks. Missouri survives in double overtime against Vanderbilt. Trey, again, you're a global correspondent. You were live texting.
I found all the stupid games today. Y'all were locked in on the important ones. I
appreciate because I wanted to tune over to games like this today, but I had 7 screens and 15 other games going. It was just surviving by drinking out of a fire hydrant. So I appreciated that while I had numerous other games on, you were like, okay, Missouri is in trouble. Okay, wait, no, Luther Burden bailed him out. Oh no, Vandy's now hooked the field goal. Like, what was that like watching double overtime between Vanderbilt and number 7 Missouri?
Yeah, it was more of what Vandy's been doing to teams all year. Pavia did just enough through the air, but it was a lot of him on the ground. It was a lot of scrambles, right? A lot of him extending drives with his legs, just making a lot of fun plays. He hurdled a guy at one point. That seems like a weekly occurrence at this point. Vandy's a fun team. They're going to play a lot of close games because of their style of football. It's really hard to defend. And I think Missouri was probably underestimating them just a little bit after having a ranked team in their house last week and Vandy losing to Georgia State. It's easy to overlook the Commodores. But, Mizzou, interesting strategy. They had the ball 4th and 2, I believe, on in-plus territory. Tough decision, but they decided to punt and pin Vanderbilt deep late. They play for overtime instead of actually going for the 4th down conversion and kicking a field goal to win. Mizzou's kicker missed 3 field goals, I believe, all within 40 yards. Yikes. So just a weird game. There's some weather. That's one thing we haven't mentioned today. There's been weather all over the country, making some interesting plays, that Colorado game especially. So, weird game. Mizzou found a way to do it. That Garrett, you always say you get one, right? And this was Mizzou's one.
Yep.
And hopefully they can take it, adjust, and go forward. But Vandy gave them all they can handle, man. I thought – go ahead.
I want to defend Vandy for a second. Diego Pavi's got stuff rolling. That's a decent Vanderbilt team, and I think
they are. I said they're going to play a lot of teams really close.
Right, and I want to just make sure, I get it. It's Vanderbilt. It's the name, right? It's easy, but this is still I get that Mizzou, if they're the team that they think that they are, shouldn't be in that position with very many teams at all. But this is still a Vanderbilt team that I think is going to jump up and get somebody this year and probably ruin the season.
They almost did today.
They almost did.
They almost did today. They were.
I think it'll happen this year. I don't know who. I'm not going to make that call yet, but I think somebody on the schedule, they're going to jump up and ruin somebody's season.
Please be Texas.
That would be so funny.
If Vandy's kicker doesn't shank a 30-yarder,
that was bad
in double overtime, are you going to bet against Diego Pavia in a 2-point conversion shootout? Because I'm not.
No, I'm not.
So it was literally that decided the game.
Yeah.
SMU reclaims the iron skillet. They scored 66 against TCU in Dallas. This was a game that I did turn down a ticket to because it was 105 air temperature and who knows what the temperature was on those metal bleachers. There's no shade at Ford Stadium. Sonny Dyksco gets ejected from this one. He had a personal foul for arguing calls in the first half. A punt return for a touchdown gets called back. He gets right up in official's face and then seems like the moment of realization when he's like, oh boy, wait, is hilarious. He gets booed out of the stadium. I don't know that I've ever seen a football coach get ejected like that before.
Yeah. Weird situation for a frustrating time for TCU. I'm sure it's a lot of frustrations boiling over from how they blew the game last week against UCF and just how the mighty have fallen since they peaked in his first year.
Yeah. I can't remember a time I've ever seen a coach get tossed with it. And nonetheless,
I've seen it in high school, but not college.
Oh yeah, no. But like also like coach that left that school at the peak and there was some success at SMU and he left them to go to the crosstown rivals. Like there's, rare chances for that kind of a thing to happen anyways. So getting tossed in that situation is it's pretty special.
What else we have? Oh, SMU didn't punt in that game, by the way. That's pretty fun. Right. Pick six, scoop and score as well. Punt return for a touchdown. I mean, everything was clicking for the Ponies. Navy, speaking of pick six, seals a win over Memphis with a pick six late. What was it, 56-44, something like that? The Midshipmen take down the preseason betting favorite to make the Group of Five playoff spot a week after Memphis beats Florida State, and everyone thinks, okay, here we go. They've got a red carpet on into the AAC title game. Tulane's maybe not looking as infallible as we all, or at least I assumed they might be going in. And then they drop this one to the Midshipmen. Just very quickly, yes or no? Even if Memphis runs the table, would you take them to make the G5 playoff spot today? That's all the context you get. They run the table. They have one loss, but it's to Navy. Would you still take them as the G5 playoff?
No.
Yes.
Okay, Trey, why?
I think they'll probably have the best resume, assuming Florida State can somewhat get their act together. I don't know that any other team that's comparing. I know name recognition. I know James Madison got a Power 5 win today, Power 4 win today, but is North Carolina really going to carry enough cachet? I don't think so.
On their fourth quarterback now.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I'm still looking out west at Boise.
That's exactly
Boise and UNLV
my
as well.
thing is, Boise played Oregon really close, and that operative word there, Trey, if for Memphis, that was doing like Tobey Maguire and Spider-Man 2, just holding on, trying to stop the train from going off the rails. That's how much work that if was doing for Florida State to turn it around and look respectable. Meanwhile,
absolutely.
for Boise, it's, you get your, close loss against Oregon. Oregon's probably going to look like a really good team the rest of the year. And I think that's the one-loss team that has the better chance right now. Now, obviously, look, Boise could blow it and lose some games and everything else, but just assuming that it's some one-losses and Memphis is one of the one-losses, I still think you got Boise that's proven more right now.
Personally, I don't have JMU losing another game this year.
Sure.
I think they're going to go undefeated.
Sunbelt is wide open after
App State. But look at their schedule. Look at James Madison's schedule. They don't get any of the contenders from the West, and App State does not look like a formidable opponent that we once thought they were. So
no, they can't play any defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Not a bad schedule, yeah. I'm just pulled it up. Not bad.
Northern Illinois and Notre Dame, both I think like at the same time take a hit. Northern Illinois walked off by Buffalo in overtime today. That was at home for Northern Illinois. Listen, I was so happy for Thomas Hancock in that win for the Huskies, but you can't lose to Buffalo at home. I mean,
they used up all their magic. All the magic got used against Notre Dame.
They have been so non-competitive, and it felt like at multiple times during this game that Northern Illinois was about to pull it away, and then Buffalo would just come right back and tie it up, and it was Northern Illinois just could not separate from them. Honestly, a little bit of what I was afraid was going to happen in College Station, where Texas A&M survives against Bowling Green. Every time I felt like, okay, now is the time that the Aggies go on a run. They score 14-17 in a row, and they win this one comfortably. Scott Loeffler and the Bowling Green Falcons said, no, we're coming back. Le'Veon Moss fumbles that ball late. He should have just gone down. The game would have been over. Gives us all a heart attack. Y'all react to either of those games. Northern Illinois' playoff contention is over.
I think the whole Max playoff contention might be over because Toledo blew it against Western Kentucky.
They did after a rain delay as well.
Yeah. Rain, they were cruising before the rain delay. I think they were up 21-10 and then got outscored 16-0 after the rain delay.
Yeah. So talking briefly on the MAC, I think Bowling Green has probably got to be the favorite to win the conference at this point, right? After two really good showings against Penn State and A&M at their house. Like that's a good Bowling Green team, all things considered. Like obviously it's a MAC team.
Best 1 and 2 team in the nation, Garrett. Best 1 and 2 team in the nation.
You're right about that, Trey. No, but I think like after what we've seen from teams, like I was watching Miami, Ohio early against Notre Dame. It was fun for 20 minutes, and then Notre Dame showed up and played football. This is just why you can't really do the transitive property thing in college football, especially this early, right? Northern Illinois beats Notre Dame, beats Texas A&M. So we're saying that Buffalo is better than Notre Dame and A&M. We can't do transitive property this early. We wait. We see what happens. A team like Bowling Green does it twice. Maybe you can start to believe they're a decent team, but it's you don't do transitive property this early in college football, man.
So it's what 31-6 BYU over Kansas State. Do y'all remember a certain tweet about a Taco Bell menu item and St. Bill Snyder?
Oh boy,
he does have it pinned to his Twitter account.
No, let's hope he doesn't delete that.
He'll never learn. Why do people tweet these things? The
last 3 tweets from the last 45 minutes, we're going to be just fine. 20 minutes later, I'm going to go smoke a cigarette. 14 minutes later, heading to Taco Bell.
Here's my thing. I will show up in the live as the representative, but who actually wants to, how are we confirming this / who's going to show up to see that?
Well, we already decided if he does this on Instagram Live or whatever, that you're.
I am the ambassador. I am happy to go where no man has ever gone and probably should ever go again. But we'll figure that part out tonight if BYU can hang on.
One of our friends and colleagues, I can't remember which one in our little Twitter community, tweeted at them when that tweet first went out that it's the 5th layer that'll get you. And that would kill me. So
it's the sour cream, man.
Yeah. Interesting state of affairs over on the Kansas State Twitter and message board. We mentioned Florida
but he's got to do it or else they get cursed like Florida State.
Well, that's true. Maybe they broke the curse. I don't know. Florida State does win. They won tonight with 277 yards of total offense. Hardly a juggernaut performance from DJU in this offense, but hey, they're off the bus. They're off the pine.
Yeah, Cal missed 2 field goals that would have made it 15-14, and they were very makeable field goals. College kickers are back, y'all. College kickers were gone for the first 3 weeks, and they were nailing too many. College kickers are officially back.
Although, to be fair, Temple's kicker hit a 64-yarder today. So the universe gives, the universe takes.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful world.
I will say Cal, the kickers missed. Cal Twitter did not miss this week. That was probably my favorite thing from this last week, just to get me through, kind of the work week. I could log in, see Twitter, and then I'd see that bear just staring at somebody else. And so it was fun. It was a good week.
Yes. Whomst among us hasn't been entertained by far left jokes and memes?
The Calgorithm, man.
Calgorithm was on fire. Trey, I think you put this segment together, so I'll let you wrap us up by taking care of business. A couple teams dominated their opponents today. I do have to shout out the Iowa Hawkeyes. I picked against them on the money line, or at least advised you to maybe lean Minnesota, but Caleb Johnson runs for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Iowa shuts out Minnesota in the second half. Who else took care of business this weekend?
Yeah, Texas all over ULM 51-3. Arch did throw a couple of interceptions, but growing pains, first full experience, who's going to be fine. Ohio State, a little close with Marshall at halftime. I think it was 28-14 at the half, but they shut out the Thundering Herd in the second half and take care of business there, 49-14. Ole Miss all over Georgia Southern. Looking through a couple others. Oh, Miami. I was really impressed with Miami. 50-15 over in-state rival South Florida. You guys mentioned on the preview show.
Yeah.
That's a tough situation. You're going into a situation where it's that team's Super Bowl. They got you at home. We all saw what happened when Alabama went to South Florida last year. So really impressive for the Hurricanes to win going away. Penn State destroyed Kent State. We can name a lot of other scores if we want to. Louisville over Georgia Tech. That was a close game for a while, and then Georgia Tech just kind of faded away there down the stretch. Yeah.
I gave out two picks in that game, the over 57.5 and Georgia Tech plus 10. Georgia Tech had 3 separate occasions where they were either 4th and goal with less than 2 yards to go or like a yard to pick up a first down to continue a drive in Louisville territory. And for some reason, even though it didn't work at all today, Georgia Tech decided, let's just run halfback smash right up the middle. And Louisville said each time, no, you don't. It was as simple as that. That was how this game was decided. Georgia Tech gave away 14 free points. They gave away a scoop and score, and Haynes King literally threw a ball basically into the end zone for Louisville. It got batted on a backwards pass. Cardinals picked it up. That was all she wrote. Georgia Tech had this game. I came away very unimpressed with Louisville, and I think they're going to have to ramp up to play some real opponents before I'm actually going to believe in them. They have a lot of fun skill talent on the offense, but this game was there for Georgia Tech, and to be honest, it felt like the Yellow Jackets lost this one. We were 1 score away from both hitting the over and the cover, and I am here very, very sad that we didn't get to cover town on either of those.
Yeah, it was a fun back and forth game. That safety felt like when Georgia Tech got the safety, it felt like the tides were turning in their favor, but man, just a rough ending for them.
All right. Well, that's week 4's live show. Chaos everywhere. We're excited to keep going. Week 5 has some really fun matchups. Obviously, Georgia, Alabama will be the headliner for that. We can't wait to break that one down in the preview show. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight on the live show. If you are listening to the podcast, if you're new, you found us for the first time, hit like, hit subscribe, join the Jimmies and the Joes. We've got our 3-Tech Takeout that comes out on Monday as well. Trey will be leading that, cleaning up the storylines that we didn't get to here tonight on the live show. And then Thursday morning, we'll have our Week 5 preview coming at you as well. For Garrett Turney and Trey Reeves, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. Until next time, so long, everybody.
Gracious him. How about